John chapter 14. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you.
Wealth and this magnificent view. Couldn't agree more. May our kingdoms prosper as beautifully as the stars.
And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also.
Isaiah 62. For Zion's sake, will I not hold my peace? And for Jerusalem's sake, I will not rest until the righteousness thereof go forth as brightness, and the salvation thereof as a lamp that burneth. And the Gentiles shall see thy righteousness, and all kings thy glory. And thou shalt be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord shall name. Thou shalt also be a crown of glory in the hand of the Lord, and a royal diadem in the hand of thy God. Thou shalt no more be termed forsaken, neither shall thy land any more be termed desolate. But thou shalt be called Hephzibah, and thy land Beulah. But the Lord delighteth in thee, and thy land shall be married. For as a young man marrieth a virgin, so shall thy sons marry thee. And as the bridegroom rejoiceth over the bride, so shall thy God rejoice over thee.
This is my Father's kingdom, a kingdom of righteousness, power, and glory.
Praise the Lord, for he is greatly to be feared. He removed the wicked and put us righteous in power.
I have set watchmen upon thy walls, O Jerusalem, which shall never hold their peace day nor night. Ye that make mention of the Lord, keep not silence, and give him no rest till he establish and till he make Jerusalem a praise in the earth. The Lord hath sworn by his right hand, and by the arm of his strength, surely I will no more give thy corn to be meat for thine enemies, and the sons of the stranger shall not drink thy wine, for the which thou hast labored. But they that have gathered it shall eat it, and praise the Lord. And they that have brought it together shall drink it in the courts of my holiness.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem Shai, pushing get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem Shai. All right, now what I want to get into today is dealing with, Amalek, the small-headed versus, all right, Persia, which is Iran. And what we have to understand that this is an ancient rivalry, okay, that we're seeing playing out today. Now, when you go into the scriptures, of course, the biggest rivalry in the scriptures, okay, is Jacob versus Esau, good against evil. All right, and that's the biggest rivalry in the scriptures, and all right, world prophecy is revolved around, those two nations. All right, the descendants of Jacob, which are Israelites, and the descendants of Esau, which are Edomites. Okay, and when you go into world history, where prophecy revolves around these two nations, even leading up to these last days. All right, what the devil is attempting to do is steal the birthright from Jacob. Okay, This devil, he's trying to establish his own birthright. He's trying to bless himself, with his own might, okay, with his own resources, his wealth, his own military might, and also with enchantments on the left hand side, okay. And he's trying to establish his own blessing, and that's why you hear a lot of talk about the Greater Israel Project, okay. And in order to achieve his Greater Israel Project, the Lord has it where he has to deal, all right, with an ancient foe, okay, which is Persian Iran, all right, which Iran, which is ancient Persian, all right, Elam, okay. And as you can see, this war here is different. There's a different energy behind this war. It's been a lot of build up. There's been a lot of anticipation to this war, okay. And there's a lot of bad blood, okay, between, all right, Amalek, these small hats, all right, and Persia, okay. And we're gonna get into a little history, um, and walk it down, okay. With the Lord, all right, He's in He's in the midst, okay. Yahweh Shema Shai is in the midst of everything that we see going on, okay. And what's happening, the Lord is getting ready to disarm Esau, okay. He's getting ready to dismantle, okay, this whole new world order. You see, because Esau only has a few moves left, okay. The MOTB, which is going to consist, of Jacob trouble, civil unrest, okay. But as this devil has embarked on this war, all right, he has awoken, all right, the wild boar in prophecy, which is Iran, and he has reignited, all right, this ancient rivalry between Persia and Amalek, okay. So you go to Ecclesiastes 1 and 9 and say history merely repeats itself. It says Yishlaki. History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Okay? Nothing under the sun is truly new, which is in the earth. So we have to understand we're seeing the ancient rivalry go head up, man. Okay? And the Lord had it to where Iran will be prepared because Iran plays a part in prophecy, which we're going to get, before we close out Abaratazah. Okay? So Iran, along with Russia, all right, Magog, okay, along with the rest of the kings of the East China, okay, they're going to play a major part, all right, in taking the whore down and setting Babylon ablaze. Okay, thus said the Lord. You see? So when you go to, let's go here real quick, just to get a little history. All right. So when you go from there, now you those movies, the 300, okay, the first had two of them, all right, and it dealt with the Persians and the Greeks, okay, and those were actual wars that happened, okay, between the Persian and the Greeks, okay, dealing with the Spartans, the Athenians, okay, was a lot of the Spartans, with Jake, okay, and then you had the Athenians, which were Edomites, okay, and you had Jake sprinkled in the Greek Empire, during this time. You see, but ultimately, because Greek was a bunch of city states. When you go into the Greeks was a bunch of city states. They became an empire under Alexander. Before then there was a bunch of separate city states. Okay, this is gonna go into the history. Matter of fact, let's go here. Okay, so it says the Greek and Persian wars from 502, all right, to 449 BCE began with the Ionian Revolt and includes key battles like Marathon, okay, and Salamis 480 BC, where Greeks repelled, all right, Persian invasions, okay, and that's where you get the movie 300, all right, which repelled one of those invasions or held up, okay, a Persian invasion, okay, with those Spartans, which they was mostly Jake, you see, but then you will have, continual, wars and battles, even after that, because even when we go to the movie 300, that was the beginning, okay, of these Persian and Greek wars, okay? And it says Philip II of Macedonia, which is later united Greece, paving the way for Alexander the Great to launch his conquest of Persia in 334 BCE, ending with his total victory in 330 BCE. It says key timeline events leading to Alexander. So in 554, you had Cyrus the Great conquers Ionian Greek cities, planting seeds for conflict. Ionian revolt against Persian rule. Athens supports the rebels, sparking the Persian desire for revenge. Oh, somebody. It says 490, all right, BC, first Persian invasion. Darius the first is defeated by Athenians at the Battle of Marathon. Second Persian invasion, Xerxes the Great burns Athens, but the Greek alliance wins at Salamis, all right, and Platae, all right. And it says peace of Callias ends major fighting, but animosity remains, all right. So they had peace, they had battles, you know, let's see here. You have battle after battle. They'll go back and forth. It was a rivalry, okay? But the Persians could never subdue, okay, the Greeks, because it was meant for the Greeks to come in power next, okay, according to Daniel 7th chapter. And it shows you the accuracy of the Bible, okay? Because Persia, which was a mighty military force, it was wealthy, but it was unable to conquer, all right, the smaller, all right, Greeks, those city Greek states, okay? They could never conquer because Greece, okay, the Greek Empire will be up next, okay? That's why when you go here, it says reign of Philip II of Macedonia, he conquered the Greek city states and plans, all right, an invasion of Persia. Alexander inherits the Macedonian throne and consolidate power over Greece. Okay, so Philip II was assassinated, which the Persians paid off, one of his bodyguards, okay, to assassinate him. You see, and they thought they was going to decapitate this invasion talk, this invasion agenda. Okay, they thought if they killed Philip II, they'll break up. Okay, this league of Greek city states. They planned on an invasion of Persia, but what it did, it amplified it. Okay, the same thing that Esau did today, the small hands did today to Persia. Okay, they thought by killing, Sayyid uh, Khamenei that they was going to decapitate, okay, this anti-West, okay, Iranian regime, which it backfired because now you got his son, okay, which they're saying, well, he's more of a hardliner than his father, okay. Come to find out, okay, when they kill Philip II, who do they get? They said Alexander inherits the Macedonian throne and consolidates power over Greece. Alexander crosses the Hellespont, all right, beginning his invasion of the Persian Empire. Okay, it says so you go to your different battles, which let's go to the Bible because the Bible, all right, speaks on Alexander, the son of Philip. So let's go to the Bible. Okay, when you go to let's go here to First Maccabees. We'll come back to that. Okay, just going through some history. First Maccabees 1:1, it says, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians, okay, and Medes, that he had reigned in his stead the first over Greece. Okay, so this is their rivalry, man. Okay, started at the beginning of the Persian Empire, all right, and they would have battles all the way into the end of the Persian Empire, okay, which it was ended by Alexander, okay. It says it made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth because it was time for the Greeks. All right, the leopard. Okay, in Daniel in 7th chapter. Okay, the he goat in Daniel the 8th chapter. Okay, which was the Greek Empire under Alexander. Okay, that would take down the Medo-Persian Empire. All right, and it says it went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. You know, he became proud. Okay, so you have all right in our records. Okay, Alexander taking down who? All right, the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, and this is Darius the third, okay, that was taken down, all right, by Alexander. He was the king of the Persian Empire at the time. Okay, you know when you go into him, you know he was a coward, just like today. It's a little more. It's reversed because you have, you know, these BB Benjamin and Yahoo coward. Okay, over the small hats, man. Okay, the American leadership cowards. Okay, but when you go into Darius, you know, he was a coward, man. He left his woman and I think his mother, his wife, his children, you know, on the battlefield fleeing from Alexander. Okay, when you go into that. But let's uh let's go from there because even after, okay, the Greeks took down the Medo-Persian Empire. Well, Persia still, all right, it had a small, okay, empire known as the Parthians. Okay, even during the time of Rome. Okay, because when Rome, all right, when they absorbed, okay, the Greeks, you know, that's why they had that term, you know, Greco-Roman Empire, was these are all Edomites. Okay, well, they had a rivalry. All right, their main rival was the Parthians. Okay, so when you go, so like, let's pull this up. Okay, their main rivalry was the the Parthians. So when you go into it, it says the Parthians, okay, and this was, you know, like a reduced Persian empire, you know, because Alexander had conquered, but then, all right, you had these Parthians, you know, they will begin to conquer and set up, you know, an empire on the side, all right, and became the Parthian Empire. They became a formidable empire, even, all right, a rival, a direct rival, okay, to the Romans. You see, so there's been a ongoing rivalry, man, between Esau and Elam. You know, this is a lot of history. It said the Parthians, all right, were a powerful ancient Iranian civilization and nomadic people originating from the Parni tribe, who established a massive empire stretching from the Euphrates to the Indus, renowned as the primary rivals of the Roman Empire. Renowned as the primary rivals of the Roman Empire, they were masters of mounted warfare, famous for the Parthian shot maneuver. They were famous, all right, so they were masters of mounted warfare, famous for the Parthian, all right, shot maneuver. They ruled as a feudal society blending Greek and Persian cultures. It says, emerging from Central Asia, the Parni tribe conquered the Seleucid province of Parthia, okay, which was one of the generals, a dynasty of one of the generals of Alexander. Okay, so later on, you know, they got back a little territory. Okay, and um, it said emerging from Central Asia, the Parni tribe conquered the Seleucian province of Parthia, northeastern Iran, under their leader Arsaces first around 247 BCE, forming the Arsacidic dynasty. It says military power. It says the Parthian army was dominated by cavalry, specifically horse archers. Okay, specifically horse archers, man. And what are the archers today, man? These missiles. Okay, it says the heavily armored knights known as cataphracts. They famously defeated Roman forces, including the destruction of Marcus Crassus, all right, army at the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BCE. Okay, which you go back to Marcus Crassus, he was part of what you call their first triumph. Okay, of Rome, where you had it was Marcus Crassus, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. Okay, and Marcus Crassus, he wanted to, mimic, the which he was the money guy. Okay, he was the richest man in Rome at the time, so he was a money guy behind Julius and Pompey. Okay, and Julius was winning all those battles. Okay, with the Gauls. Okay, and the British, the Britons. Okay, so he was winning those campaigns and conquering land and territory for Rome, the soldiers. Okay, so Julius Caesar was like a people's champ. And you had this guy, Marcus Crassus, he wanted to imitate that. So he decided to pick a fight, okay, with the Parthians to get glory. All right, and he got put to death. All right, they got slaughtered. The Romans got slaughtered, and he got put to death, man. Okay, and it says, and that was in that battle, because Roman, will go on to rule, okay, for a while, but the Parthians was just always a thorn in their side. Rome dominated for a while because it was their time, you know. It says empire and culture said the Parthian Empire served as a bridge between east and west. You see that? Controlling key silk trade routes. Okay? And why does Esau want to take down Iran? Because they want to control, they want to have full control of their region, the traffic between east and west. Iran is in their way. Okay? It said they adopted Hellenistic Greek cultural elements while reviving Persian traditions. Okay? So even with the Romans, okay, the Greeks and Persians had their wars. All right, the Romans and Parthians had their wars. Okay, it was an ancient rival. Okay, leading up to what we see today. Because when you go into prophecy, let's get prophecy. Let's bring everything home. Okay, well, prophecy. Well, matter of fact, let me go here first. Okay, because you had this demon, Antiochus, all right, or Antiochus. He tried to spoil, okay, the Persian. And you go to Second Maccabees, the 9th chapter. Okay, because this also lets us know, all right, the damn devil. This is Second Maccabees chapter 9 and 1. It says about that time Antiochus would dishonor out of the country of Persia, for he had entered the city called Persepolis and went about to rob the temple and to hold the city, whereupon the multitude running to defend themselves with their weapons put them to flight. And so it happened that Antiochus being put to flight of the inhabitants returned with shame. Okay, so he went and thought that he was going to make a spoil, okay, on the Persians. He heard about the wealth, that they had, you know. So in his mind, he's going to make a spoil on the Persians, okay? But they put him to flight, you see? And it says now, when he came to Ecbaton, I believe that's where Tobit was at, or uh, Sarah's family, the Tobit's son Tobias. Sarah was his wife that he got in the book of Tobit. I believe her family was in Ecbaton. You know, I think Tobit was in Nineveh, if I'm not mistaken. All right. But it says now when he came to Ecbaton, news was brought him what had happened to Nicanor and Timotheus. Yeah, so this devil, he took his ass to Persia, thinking he was gonna make a quick spoil. He just gonna go rob the place like these devils do now. Okay, but his ass got beat back. Okay, he got ran off. Okay, and he left there with dishonor. But then he gets to report because in the previous chapter, Julius, okay, and what they call the Maccabean revolt. All right, Julius and his men, okay, Judas and his men, they they defeated Nicanor, okay, which was a Greek general, okay. They defeated him in battle, put him to flight. So this nigga was getting bad news from all sides, just like now. Okay, you have the prophets, okay, which is spiritually consuming this man. You see, and now he's losing wars to who? Persia, Iran, which is prophetic. Okay, and what did the devil want to do? It said, then swelling with anger, all right, knowing he had but a short time, he shall come with great wrath. Okay, then swelling with anger, he thought to avenge upon the Jews the disgrace done to him by those that made him flee. So he got his ass whooped by the Persians. So he like, well, I'm gonna come take it out on Jake. Okay, and this is how we know Jacob trouble is looming. Okay, because Esau was pissed, man. He's getting embarrassed on the global stage. This nigga pissed, man. Okay, then he getting told by himself by the prophets, man. Okay, he said, therefore command he his chariot men to drive without ceasing and to dispatch the journey, the judgment of the Most High, now following him, for he has spoken proudly in this sort, that he will come to Jerusalem and make it a common burying place of the Jews. Okay? Knowing that he have but a short time, he shall come with great wrath. All right, so this nigga caught that L in person. He like, I'm gonna go take it out on Jake. You know, I'm gonna go take it out on civilians. You see? So it will make sense that this devil, okay, as he's getting embarrassed on the global stage, man, that he finna really prep Jacob trouble, man. Okay, because that's prophecy that has to happen before this war goes nuclear. Okay, which is also gonna lead into the MOTB because he know you have but a short time. Okay, well let's go here. Let's get now some prophecy. All right, let's get free precepts on prophecy, showing you everything is coming full circle. Okay, and ultimately, how Shai, he's going to come conquer all nations. Okay, Esau, all right, Elam, the Persians, okay, Moab, the Russians, okay, so forth and so on. All right, now when you go to let's get this in Isaiah, we always get it. Isaiah 21, get it in NLT. It's Isaiah 21 in NLT. It says, I see a terrifying vision. Okay, and this is World War III. I see the betrayer betraying and the destroyer destroying. This is Babylon, because for the longest, Babylon has been destroying, all right, and dealing underhandedly in the earth. Okay, it says, go ahead, you Elamites and Medes, attack and lay siege. So this is the Lord giving an order, a charge to Elam, okay, which are the Persians today, all right, and the Medes, which are the Russians of today. Okay, attack and lay siege. So what we're seeing is prophecy, man. This is prophecy, man. The Lord, all right, is orchestrated these devils, all right, has set a trap for these devils to start World War III. Okay, because this conflict that we're seeing now, man, this is gonna draw in all these major powers into war, man. Okay, Esau got his little agenda, but see, Esau agenda takes the back seat to what the Lord got going on. Okay, that little shit that whatever Esau got, all right, the little MOTB plot twist he got going on, well, that takes back seat because the Third World War, cancels out everything Esau wants to do. This third world war is going to cancel out everything the devil is trying to establish, man. Okay, it says, you Elamites and Medes attack and lay siege. I will make an end to all the groaning Babylon has caused. Okay, so Elam, Persia, which is Iran today, and the Medes, Russia, they're going to be at the forefront. Okay, and bringing down this Babylonian empire, man, along with those other nations, the kings of the east, they're going to join the ranks. Okay, of Russia and Iran. Okay, and it's gonna put the end to the groaning Babylon cause, man. Okay, it's gonna begin the end because Yahweh Shai is gonna be the finalizer because Yahweh Shai. All right, it's gonna eradicate all the militaries of the earth. Okay, and make sure Babylon becomes a lake of fire through the missiles and through the chariots. Okay, so going here, let's go here. You went into it the other day when we go to the book of Daniel. We'll get to the point. Daniel 5. I'm showing you how, Iran, what we seeing when Iran, this is major prophecy, man. Okay, and this is bad blood, okay, between Esau and Persia. These small hats, Amalek, okay, because you can link Alexander or the Macedonian to Haman, the Macedonian in the book of Esther, okay, and they link Haman to Agag, which Agag was what a king of Amalek, okay, so that their rivalry runs deep. All right, they'll start at 23. And this is Daniel speaking to Belshazzar, all right, which was the last, all right, king of the Babylonian Empire, okay, before it was taken down by the Medes and Persia, the Medo-Persian Empire. Daniel 5 and 23, for you have proudly defiled the Lord of heaven and have these cups, all right, and have had these cups from his temple, all right, brought before you. You and your nobles and your wives and concubines have been drinking wine from them while praising gold and silver, bronze, all right, iron, wood, and stone, gods that neither see nor hear, know anything at all, but you have honored, all right, but you have not honored the Most High who gives you breath and life and controls your destiny, man. That's the spirit of Esau now, because of the gold and silver, his wealth, all right, and also his technology, man, which are made, of these certain materials, okay, these certain things, these certain elements, okay, especially with his AI, okay, because AI is nothing but an idol, okay, it's just the most advanced idol the earth has ever seen, but it's still an idol, it's a souped up idol, okay, and as we can see now, that idol is not helping, is not working for this devil, man. The idol is being confounded. The Lord gonna confound this AI shit, man. Okay, that shit is hype. Okay, at the end of the day, that shit is hype, overrated. Everything about this nigga is overrated, man. Okay, but this devil, he's praising, his wealth, okay, his status, his technology, okay, but he doesn't acknowledge the Most High. Matter of fact, he's trying to use all these things to undermine the Most High, to replace the Most High. Okay, so you keep reading, but he doesn't understand the Most High controls his destiny. The elites ain't in control of their own destiny, man. They don't have it all figured out. Okay, prophecy don't walk these niggas down, man. There was a time when they had more control than what they have now. Okay, prophecy don't walk this nigga down, man. The Lord done slapped the remote out this nigga hand. Okay, and now this nigga just gotta go along for the ride. Okay, and it says, so the Most High has sent this hand to write this message. This is the message that is written, many to call and parsing. It says, this is what these words mean. Many means number. The Most High has numbered the days of your reign and has brought it to an end. Okay? This devil's reign is brought to an end because this is Babylon the Great. Okay? So this is the same message to this current Babylon the Great, man. This was right to I say the Neo-Babylonian Empire, this account, okay? But now it applies to Babylon the Great, ran by Esau, okay? Headed by Amalek the Chaldeans, man. It said Tikal means weighed. You have been weighed on the balances and have not measured up, okay? Because the wickedness he's done, okay, well, he hasn't paid for that. There's a judgment, okay? Because the Lord is all about balance. So there's a lot of judgment that needs to go forth, okay, to balance this nigga out for all the wickedness he's done, man. Okay, and the destruction is just the beginning because he has 1,000 years of slavery to pay, man. Okay, rigorous slavery. It said parson means divided. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Okay, which today there will be what, the Russians and Iran. Okay, and which we know, all right, they're going to get the ups. Okay, on Babylon, all right, on Babylon the Great America. Okay, they're going to get the ups. All right, but it's going to be short lived because Yahweh Shai is going to come and take all of them down, man. Okay, you see? So, yeah, we're seeing, history repeat itself, and it's all tied into prophecy, man. Okay, what we're seeing happen is prophecy. Okay, the devil's agenda is take a back seat to prophecy, man, and what they want to do and try to do, and this greater Israel project, and reset the economy, which they're going to be able to reset it because the MOTB has to be implemented, which is going to be their new global currency. Okay, because the MOTB is going to be linked to the new global currency. Okay, so they have one more rabbit in the hat, and then they're done. Okay, so that's the point. Just wanted to get into that, Lord will. All right, you brothers. All right, and you sisters, edify once again and give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders, GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessing, salutation to the whole elect. Shalom.